I'm Robert Cardoza, and you're watching On the Street, the intersection of business and politics. This is where we take all of the information that has been disseminated throughout the country on every media, trying to throw it into a funnel, see what comes out that we can tell you is basically the honest-to-God truth without sliding it one way or the other, right or left. Now, we want to talk about what's in the news, and you know, there's a lot of things going in the news today, but really the GOP is in the news. I feel almost like a Duncan yo-yo. You remember what that was? Are you old enough to know what that was? That's sort of when you went side to side and up and down and in and out. That's what the Duncan yo-yo is. Well, that's kind of what's going on with the GOP, because I go from one day to the next and they just keep changing their story all the time. But let's talk about Reince Priebus. Now, Reince Priebus is the chairman of the Republican National Committee, and he's saying that they're going through a total restructure and had a 100-page report of things that the Republican Party or the Conservative Party was going to change. Some really good things, in my opinion. One of them is shortening the primary season. You know, the primary season generally lasts about a year. By the time that's done, you get fed up with everything that's going on. You know, last year they had 23, debates between the presidential hopefuls. 23. By the time they got done with about 4 or 5, I was fed up with it already. You know, I couldn't figure out why most of these guys were even running. So what Priebus wants to do is he wants to change that primary season to start around June or July of the primary season and end right around September or October, shortening that season and then having only about 4 or 5 debates, which gives you a real good idea of where everybody stands without you being inundated with the same stuff over and over and over again, which is just going to bore you to death. Now, the Republicans in this report have realized that they're never going to get back into the White House if they don't change their platform in a meaningful way. You can't tell half of the population of this country that they're cheating or you don't like them or you're not going to benefit them and expect to win the White House. It just isn't going to happen. So they are going to go a long way towards changing or softening their stance on immigration, on gun laws, on women's rights. They're going to do all of those things, and they're going to change their stance, at least the way it sounds, on tax reformation. Now, I've got to tell you, I'm all for smaller government. I'm all for reducing our expenses. But you know what? When you look at both sides, I don't know what to believe anymore. Both sides have something that is really good and something you should be paying attention to. So it's important that the GOP change what's going on. I think you're going to see a great race coming up, and I love the idea they're going to shorten that primary season. The problem I have is, will the Democrats? Because last season, President Obama went without any opposition. There was no primary season for the Democrats. This year there's going to be, and will they conform or comply with the shorter season that the GOP wants to do, a lot of which is saving money, and that's what's going on there. Now, the other part of what's in the news is amazing. Google admitting infringement of personal information. This is dealing with Google Maps and street mapping. What they've said is that they've gotten passwords and they've gotten email accounts and they've gotten all banking, all kinds of information as a result of their street mapping. As they go through, they actually are infringing on the internet and what's going on out there. So having admitted that, it creates a real possibility, if that information were to be leaked, that you could lose your identity in a big way. And just think of the number of accounts and the amount of information that they're getting as they do the Google mapping. It's a little surprising that they went that far to admit this, but you know what? It's there. Now, you know what? Last week, you heard us talk about, or 2 weeks ago, you heard us talk about the internet infringement in cyber attacks. Well, you know what? This is just a little part of that. If you've been watching the news, you know that South Korea was attacked on a cyber level and blamed China, but it turns out that when they did the check, China was just a way stop, and it wasn't China that infringed, but they did get attacked. And it attacked their banking, it attacked their mortgage and all of those things. It attacked their finances, and it attacked their power grids. Now, if they can do that to South Korea, what do you think is going to happen to us? You know, so a couple of weeks ago we talked about they would take a slower tack, but Maybe, maybe not. Maybe a mixture of slow and fast, and economically could take us right to our knees. And we've got to be very, very careful when it comes to those cyber attacks. So you know what? You know what? Oscar Gonzalez, our good friend that was in a couple weeks ago, what he said was, you know, every 3 months, you should be changing your passwords, and you should make it something that is literally impossible to do. So if you have a mixture of letters and numbers, then basically they can't every 3 months break that code. Now I want to remind you that you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Google+. Go to YouTube and see our shows right there. Just search Robert Cardoza Live. I want to remind you that you're watching On the Street. This is the intersection of business and politics. And coming up next, we're going to talk about new legislation. I'm Robert Cardoza.